The nation and the world kept a close eye on Ohio on election night, and at the helm, overseeing the count, Secretary of State Jon Husted, who joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Great to be with you both.
So you had a great line. We love that line. Florida is the next Florida. But what lessons were learned for Ohio?
You know what? Our bipartisan teams of 88 county boards of elections did a great job. That Ohioans are good people, that we have a sound election structure, a sound election system, and we were able to provide a confident outcome where, whether you like the outcome or not, the process was intact, it had integrity, and people can feel confident in the outcome.
Mr. Secretary, some tough words in this election, though, some of them aimed at you. One editorial, in fact, I saw, Secretary of Suppression. There were questions about the fired election workers earlier on, the appeal of weekend before election voting, along with these provisional ballots. Senate Minority Leader Eric Kearney, as a matter of fact, told me yesterday that he believes some of this was subjective. In other words, your choice on kind of a partisan note to pursue some of this. I mean, at the end of all of this, how do you answer that? I mean, is that something that's going to kind of now follow you in your political career, this suppression issue?
You know what? It's kind of like criticizing the cook who delivered a great meal. You may not like the process where we got to this point, but it ended up working out just great. There are no post-election questions about the integrity of how our elections process worked on election day, and Ohioans can be proud. We could have looked like Florida. Instead, we look like Ohio. We look like we had our act together, and Ohioans can be proud of the outcome in terms of how our elections were run.
Sensitive to that criticism? You've heard it.
You know what? Nobody likes to be criticized, but again, that's part of the business. If you're going to be the Secretary of State in the most important swing state in the country, you can expect that your detractors not only want to criticize you, but they intentionally want to create chaos to benefit their point of view. But the bottom line is that things went smoothly. And I feel good about where we are, not just because of me, but because of the entire team that we had across the state.
So along those lines, though, if you had to do it again, would you change the course of action that you took at all?
You know what? There are always lessons to be learned. We're gonna go back and do this, but and take a look at what needs to be changed. But it's mostly the law. I follow the law. I'm not the maker of the law. I'm the implementer of the law. The last 3 days, for example, that was in a state law that was voted on unanimously by Democrats and Republicans. I was upholding the state law. If the legislators want to change the law, great. You know what? We'll implement whatever that is. But the bottom line is it all went well in Ohio in terms of how we delivered the elections process, and in the end, we can be proud of how we look to the world.
Mr. Secretary, you had some, I would say, some tough words for fellow Republicans at a conference on Thursday, where you talked about the Republican Party veering too far to the right early on and the inability to get back. Damaged goods, I think, is what you said.
It's not exactly what I said.
You did say damaged. They were damaged goods.
Well, I said our candidate was because, frankly, we tore each other apart in the primary process and moved our eventual nominee too far out of the mainstream to really appeal to the average person across the country. And it doesn't mean that you can't have good, sound conservative beliefs. You just got to articulate it in a way and prescribe policies that make sense to the average person, that affects them where they live and how they live their lives. It can't be about narrow ideological issues. It has to speak to the broader audience of what Americans want and expect from their government.
And so you have a bit of advice for folks going forward as we try to move the country more toward bipartisanship. It seemed that was the big lesson from this election.
Look, this is an emotional time right now for both parties, and there will be a tendency for everybody to overreact, okay? It is time to take that deep breath, including myself and everybody else, and to reflect on what we learned from this, both in terms of administering elections and politically. And let's take some time. If Democrats want John Boehner to work with Barack Obama, Democrats in Ohio should work with John Kasich and people like Jon Husted to try to solve these problems. It's a two-way street. Bipartisanship is not just the majority working with the minority, it's the minority working with the majority. And let's take a couple months and actually govern and fix the issues of the state rather than starting into politics already. We would all benefit from that.
Secretary of State Jon Husted, it's now official. You can get some sleep.
Yes.
Great.
It's been a long week.
Some rest.
Good to see you.
Thanks.